This video is going to be about the easiest corn liquor recipe for beginners. Let's go. Now, I get a lot of questions about moonshining from beginners, mostly from beginners, through the Still in the Clear website and this Still in the Clear YouTube channel and Moonshine for Beginners over on MeWe.com. I see a lot of questions and a lot of comments. And a very common one is, as a beginner, a lot of people just want to try a corn liquor. Like, that's pretty common first step. And so today I'm going to go over one of the easiest corn liquor recipes there is. It's called a sugar mash, which means we're mixing grain with sugar. We're not converting any starches like you would in an all grain mash. And there's only one ingredient, one grain ingredient, and that's cracked corn. And it's very easy to remember the recipe. So here's what it is. 1 pound of corn per 1 gallon of water, 2 pounds of sugar per 1 gallon of water. That's it. And then we're going to pitch in some yeast. I like to use daddy yeast with this recipe, but you could use anything, including bread yeast. So let's get started by putting a bunch of water in here. I'm going to do a large batch today. I'm going to do a 40-gallon batch. So I'm going to use 40 pounds of grain, I say 80 pounds of sugar. I'm not really going to use 80 because I bought 3 25-pound bags. And they're, that's 75 pounds of sugar, but I'm not worried about that last 5 pounds. Now I need to, in order to soak all the flavor out of the corn to make a good corn liquor with a sugar wash, we need to cook that corn and loosen up the starch and get all those flavors ready to kind of soak into the water. So we're going to cook this corn at 160 degrees for 45 minutes. So let me get that going right now. And I'm going to crank this up pretty high because I'm also going to be adding my paddle mixer, electric paddle mixer. So while I wait on this water to heat up, I want to set up the electric paddle mixer because I'm doing such a large batch. It's going to be 40 pounds of corn that I'm stirring, and I got to keep stirring for 45 minutes. I don't want to do it by hand, so I'm going to set up my electric paddle mixer. If you are interested in seeing how I built mine, I did do a video about it. I'll put it down in the show notes or something, or maybe I put it up in a card up here so you can find it pretty easy. But yeah, let me get that set up. Now, after you've cooked the grain, you'll be able to see that the grain has swollen up. It takes up much more space now than it did. The smell is very sweet, like you were cooking some corn on the stove. And keep in mind that, we're not trying to gelatinize this corn like we would if we were doing starch conversion. So it's not that sticky, thick consistency. We don't want it to get all the way there. We just want to cook that corn so that the flavors mix very well with the water so that it becomes part of the flavor of the mash. And now I'm going to start draining this out of my pot into buckets so that I can put it in my large 55-gallon fermenter. And also remember, I'm doing a real large batch, but this is completely scalable to whatever size. Just remember, it's 1 pound of cracked corn per gallon of water. It's 2 pounds of sugar per gallon of water, and then daddy yeast. And I typically do 1 ounce of daddy yeast by weight per 10 gallons. And while the liquid is draining into the bucket, I'm going to start scooping out the grains with this smaller bucket because it's not going to easily go through the drain. And for those of you that might be wondering, you could also treat this recipe like a sour mash, just remembering you can do multiple generations, and you want to add in a little bit of your back set, which is the liquid left over in your still after your run. Now that I've got the corn moved from the cooking pot into the fermenter, I've got probably 15 to 17 gallons of water in this pot, and I'm just going to warm it up enough just to make dissolving the sugar easy. So heating this water up, and then I'm going to put in the 75 pounds of sugar. So I've let this simple corn liquor mash set. It's come down to temperature. There's already some action in there. I think you might be able to see some fermentation happening. And I haven't even added the yeast yet. I actually let it set over the weekend. And so I'm back today to go ahead and put in the yeast. I'm just using a simple daddy yeast, and I'm going to just eyeball, about 4 or 5 ounces of yeast and stir that in. Now you can just sprinkle the dry yeast on the surface and leave it. I like to just kind of push it down and make sure it all gets wet. Either way will work. And I'll bring the video right back when fermentation is complete and I start the distillation. Now that the fermentation is complete, it is time to start our distillation. Now, if you've been watching the live streams that I do every Thursday night here on the Still in the Clear channel, you've already seen me run a couple of stripping runs of this corn liquor. And so I have collected about 2.5 gallons from the stripping runs. And now I'm going to do a 1.5 run. And the 1.5 run is I'm going to take the stripping runs, I'm going to put them in the still, and then I'm going to fill the rest of the still up with some more corn liquor wash. And then we're going to run that. Now, the reason I made such a large batch, or a 40-gallon batch, is because I wanted to do an experiment with 3 different ways to run the corn liquor: a 1 and done, a 1.5 run, and a double distillation. And so this is going to be the 1.5 run, and I've chosen the 15-gallon traditional from Copper Still Co. I love running this still. And I'll put a link down in the show notes or a card up front. If you're interested in one of these stills, you can get them here at the Homebrew Center in Fort Smith, Arkansas. You can also get them online at copperstillco.com. Like I said, I'll put a link there. So the stripping runs are going to go in first, and then I'm going to put in the wash and then get things going, get it all set up. So let's get that done right now so we can get going. I did 6-gallon runs in the Mile High still, stripped them out, did those on the live stream. That's all in there. Now we're going to take some of the wash and get it in the still, and I'm just going to use my pump to do that. And I'm just going to fill this up to this line here so that I have the entire cone is my headspace for the still. So while we're waiting on this to fill up, I just want to talk about why I'm doing a single pot run, a 1.5 run, and a double distillation. I'm doing it all from the same wash because I want to be able to taste each one and try to tell a difference, because I get that question a lot too. Is it better to double distill? Is it better to single distill? And there's really not a better. It's really about preference and what you like. Me personally, I almost always do a single pot still run. The reason I want to do these 3 separate runs and do a video about me tasting them is maybe I can pull out some differences that I can describe to you, and then without trying all of those combinations with every recipe, you might be able to kind of get a hint of what you might want to start with and start your experimentation from that point. So I'm going to get this pot filled up, then I'm going to connect all the pieces, and we'll start this run. In fact, I'm doing another live stream tonight when at least on the day that I'm recording this video. This video probably won't be published for a few days after, but I'm going to be doing a live stream again tonight, every Thursday night, and I'll still be making this run. So in the live stream, people will get to watch and ask questions and all of that fun stuff. If you haven't checked out the live streams that we do every Thursday night, you might check it out. They're a lot of fun. Now I've got the still set up. We're ready to roll. I made a mess, as always, spilled stuff on the floor, spilled stuff all over the still. It's how I do things, as we know. So the run is finished, and last night during the live stream, I ran most of the run, and then we shut it down, ended the live, and then the next day I picked up and started the still back up and finished running it. Started out at about 155 proof and ended at 56 proof. Collected 4 3/4 gallons. And so now what I need to do is decide of all of these jars which I'm going to keep in the final product, because I've got my heads, my hearts, and my tails in here. And I'm going to do a completely separate video about making cuts. I'm going to use this run to make that video, but I'm not going to go over that now. So I'm going to go ahead and do my tasting and decide what I'm going to keep, and I'll come right back. So I've made my cuts, and I was able to keep about 2.5 gallons. I'm going to blend all these together and set it aside so that I can do that other video I was telling you about. These are what I'm not keeping in the final product, and I'm just going to dump that into my faints jar to be ran at another date. And if you want to check out these live streams I'm telling you about, it's every Thursday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you subscribe and hit the notifications button, you'll get a notification every time I'm about to go live. And if you're new to distilling, start with this playlist. It's very helpful.